meeting to order. If everyone could please rise for the flag salute led by Mr. Myers. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the September 19th council meeting. I hope the thunderstorms don't scare you off. All righty, if I could have the clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Brudnicki. Here. Councilmember Iyer.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas. Here. Councilmember Nixon. Here. Councilmember Hoag. Here. Councilmember Okalander. Here. Councilmember Walker. Here. We have a quorum.
All righty, thank you. Under additions and corrections to the agenda, please add payroll in the amount of $92,742.47 and claims the amount of $807,835.22. And then I want to remind council that the Snoqualmie Valley Governments Association meeting is next Wednesday, the 27th. It is here in Duvall. So if you could RSVP to Jody by Friday, it would be helpful, so she'll get the agenda out to everybody. With that said, are there any council members who wish to speak this evening? Any other council members wishing to speak? All righty. Okay, Councilmembers Hoag, Walker, and Nixon. Okay. With that, are there any other additions and corrections to the agenda? All righty, hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt tonight's council agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is the consent agenda. It's council minutes and committee of the whole minutes for September 5th, as well as payroll for the 1st through the 15th, as well as claims. And finally, an agenda bill AB 1767, approve and authorize the mayor to sign an amendment to the interlocal agreement with the city of Snoqualmie for IT services. We spoke about that at the last council meeting.
So moved. Second.
Alrighty, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Alrighty, motion carries. Comments from the audience? Anyone wishing to address council, just come on up, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jashar Runtz. I own Alpine Integrated Medicine. We're actually located on Ribbon Ridge, but I'm here today on behalf of the Duvall Chamber of Commerce. Just wanted to note that the Duvall Chamber of Commerce works to support local small businesses in our community, and we invite any small business owners who are interested to come on down and check us out at one of our meetings and at the Duvall Visitor Center and join us. And we're excited because in October we're having a candidate forum on the 5th from 6:30 to 8, where we're hearing from our candidates in the upcoming election, and are excited to be able to meet everybody and ask the various questions that the chamber members submitted to our panel. So thank you for the opportunity to announce that and address everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and Elizabeth Hill, and I'm here for the DFA, Duvall Foundation for the Arts. And for those of you, let's see, a couple new council members that may not know, the Duvall Foundation for the Arts started in 1998 as sort of a partnership with the city government to be the nonprofit fundraising arm for one of the projects that we were working on back then, which is building a performing arts center. And so where we are on that project is we have an tri-party agreement with the City of Duvall, the developer, and Duvall Foundation for the Arts. The developer is Westcott Homes. We have money from For Culture to do the Thayer Barn to protect the wood with a tent covering, which we're going to be putting up at the end of September of this year. And then we're going to be repurposing that wood in the final building when we get it done. We've been looking at different sites around the Puget Sound and talking to stakeholders within the community. Based on that, we've gone into negotiations with LMA Architects, who are like the premier architects in this kind of facility, so we're pretty excited about it. And those are probably the two biggest pieces of news I wanted to let you know.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All righty, anybody else? All righty, I just have a few quick things. I'm sorry.
My name is Richard Bowman. I live at 27127 Northeast Stewart Street in Duvall, Washington, 98019. Jersey City Council, Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate your time. I want to say thank you for doing a fantastic job. I know it's not easy. There's a lot of things on the plate. I read through your COWs. I read through all the stuff at home. It's huge. So I just want to say thank you. I became a resident of Duvall's Heron Cove neighborhood when I purchased my home February 2nd, 2016, so I haven't been here very long. In December 2015, I spent time in Duvall meeting neighbors on Stewart Street, reviewing the land around the property that I was interested in buying. Our real estate agent had performed research on an old water tower property across the street from my home. This was shown as open space property, according to city documents. Even my neighbors confirmed that their real estate agents had looked up the city documents to verify this. It was not until I purchased my home that a neighbor found contradicting information on the City of Duvall website, which clearly showed the city-owned old water tower property zoned as R4 residential and open space in the current City of Duvall comprehensive plan. Multiple city documents have shown conflicting information between 1990 and 2017. We in Heron Cove worked with the city using proper channels to request this particular parcel to be returned to an open space designation and eliminate the conflicting information in the comprehensive plan document. After all of our neighbors weighed in their thoughts, we actively worked as a team to file documents, write letters, and appear at council meetings and the planning commission meetings to make our recommendation known. We were very happy when the amendment to return this property to open space was added to the planning commission recommendations as documented as such in Amendment 3, reference CPA 17-003 of the CPA document you're going to be reviewing tonight. The city staff has assisted us with crafting the amendment. The planning commission approved the change. City council approved and accepted the change. During 4th of July, we had a huge block party to celebrate the fact that it's going to return to open space. I'm here today to show my extreme displeasure with the most recent information from the City of Duvall staff. They have recommended our amendment be deferred from the current planning commission document. When new neighborhoods are built, they receive a small greenbelt, open space, or community park space. If this rare piece of property is sold as R4 residential developers such as Quadra Homes, the city will receive salesmen, and of course, when annexed, they'll receive more money. I can understand the lure of this prized piece of property and how much money the city would acquire for the sale. When this open space is gone, where will we get our open space for Heron Cove? Once the land is sold, we will not have necessary to walk through in nature to view on these natural trails and wildlife corridors. I envision Heron Cove residents donating money to the city to help build an overlooking section and trails along that portion. Actually, people in our 13 group actually have money they want to donate to the city. In conclusion, I have problems trusting our government process. I was told the city staff, follow recommendations of City Council and Planning Commission. I was told these meetings were the vehicle we should use to request changes and make recommendations. I do believe the city staff would reject recommendations that are illegal or that would create a safety or health issue. This change, this amendment, does not fit that category. I am urging the Planning Commission and City Council to uphold their decision, but they got to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to address council tonight? Okay, I just have a few things. The first is I heard from a number of folks that were concerned about speeders on Stevens Street. So the police department's been very active in that neighborhood, and as such, I passed down a report that was written by the chief today that outlined some of those pieces to it. And there's a discussion going on whether the actual stop sign at 2nd Avenue and Stevens will remain. It's under discussion right now regarding line of sight issues as well as just safety issues, and so we'll obviously address that issue. The second item is I've been working very aggressively with staff because in 10 days all of you will receive the proposed 2018 budget from me, and so there'll be a number of different changes with respect to it. The biggest one to answer this gentleman's question is we are going to be fully funding the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Plan, and it was my recommendation that before the decision is irrevocably made on a piece of property that we take a holistic perspective on all the properties within the city to say, is this the best use of a piece of property within our Parks, Trails, and Open Space Plan? So the community will be able to engage over the next 2 years with this process. There'll be new leadership at the helm, and they'll be able to guide that process through that. But that was my recommendation, to say, let's look holistically at the city and all the properties we have before we make decisions on individual pieces as we go. Outside of that, we are looking really close to wrapping up 2 key projects in the city. We'll address those briefly tonight. The nice thing is we have an open house planned for October 28th for the Big Rock ball fields. For those that get a chance to get up there, you'll see grass on at least half the field. The rest of it will get finished up by the second week of October, hopefully finishing the entire project by October 28th, which will have a grand opening event for that as well. So with that, Councilmember Hope.
I attended the Sound City Association meeting as a guest with Mayor Pro Tem Oaklander. And what I wanted to report on was a workshop that took place before the main meeting. It was about law enforcement's perspective on the heroin and prescription opiate crisis. We heard from Renton Police Chief and Auburn Police Commander. They served on the Opiate Addiction Task Force, and we didn't get into the big hot topic of injection sites, but what they did talk about was the task force recommendations. They had 3 different key points. One is the prevention, one is treatment, and the other is overdose prevention. Under prevention, we talked about safe storage, disposal of medications, screening in schools to identify the opiate issues. Treatment, they talked about expanding treatment and having it available on demand. Also, what else did they talk about? Expanding Narcan, having it more available and accessible for overdose prevention. And what I found really interesting is that in their cities, they have daily calls where they go to opiate people that are possibly overdosing from opiates. So we're not seeing that kind of trend in Duvall, of course. They have a handful. Our police chief told me that they just have used Narcan a handful of times since they've had it available in the last year. So, but I just think it's good that we keep talking about it. So, that's it.
Okay. Any questions for Councilmember Hope? All right, Councilmember Walker.
Just to mention a few upcoming meetings and other events. Tomorrow, the Snoqualmie Watershed Forum is going to be having their annual tour in the Upper Skycomish watershed. If any council members would like to go, and driving up to Skycomish around 3 o'clock tomorrow. And the Watershed Forum is many things. It looks after salmon recovery under the Endangered Species Act that all of our cities pay into. But they also provide a lot of technical assistance for watershed health, and also they help with capital projects, including our Main Street, and helping us replace one of the culverts for that project. So we'll be taking a tour of the Upper Skycomish and some of their projects that the forum was instrumental in helping them with. A few other events. Fire District 45 will be having their town hall meeting next Tuesday, September 26th at 7 to 9. I assume that's going to be at the fire station. This Thursday, I want to let city staff know that Savor Snoqualmie Valley is going to be meeting at the Fall City Roadhouse, and last time they were very pleased to have a member of city staff attending, our finance director attended. And then lastly, the Snoqualmie Valley Community Network is going to be continuing a discussion on the theme that they introduced at a recent community meeting at our Key Leaders Summit. That would be being a trauma-informed community. There's 2 upcoming events that community members can participate in and learn more about. And one of those is going to happen tomorrow, September 20th, tomorrow, at 6:30 to 8:30, and that's at the Carnation Library. And then the following meeting is going to be happening on Wednesday, September 27th, 6:30 to 8:30 at the Snoqualmie Library. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councilman Walker? And Battalion Chief I noticed that you shook your head when you said the location of the site. Do you know where it is?
It will be at the Cherry Gardens Lodge, so the old Cherry Gardens Community Center. Most of our notices make that clear. The Facebook posting put our headquarters. We have to figure out a way to fix that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Nixon.
If you buy your tickets by September 30th, you can get to the Snow Valley Seniors Auction for $65 instead of $75. This year's auction is going to be at Carnation Farms. They're going to utilize the farm as it was intended as a nonprofit, and they're going to have it very nice. So I hope that everybody comes up to that. The boat shows this weekend. I found something interesting that some of the old timers might find interesting, and this is the Duvall Citywide Visioning Questionnaire Final Summary of Results from 2004. And the thing that was the most interesting to me is the top 10 things. Retain rural character, control or minimize growth, traffic, want more retail services, i.e. restaurants, get this, Fred Meyer. No more retail services, i.e. chain stores. Same thing, support businesses, pedestrian connections, more parks, support controlled growth, affordable housing, and architectural design. And it just hasn't changed much over the years. And if anyone's interested, there was a gal out of Snoqualmie years ago, and she gave me a little thing that's called How to Build a Community. And it's a funny little saying, but if you want one, let me know. But in the silly season of election time, it is important that we all realize we all want the best for you all. And I think after 10 years of seeing the exact same thing, that it's important that we work together. So thank you.
Okay, any questions for Councilmember Nixon? All righty. Mr. Warren, I believe you have a couple of items tonight.
I have 2 items. Thank you. First is looking for action so we can publish and make notice on the proposal to reschedule our council meeting on election night, November 7th, rescheduled to November 1st. So I just want to get consensus or something on tonight either way what we're doing. Okay. Everyone's nodding yes. Okay, we'll get that advertised. So the November 7th election night council meeting will be canceled. There will be a meeting rescheduled for November 1st instead. I think that's great. And then on the 26th, I believe, so the board was trying to get my attention with as a reminder, I believe that's our first night for special workshops here, or at the EBC location for budget. So you guys won't be able to attend unless you're the budget workshop. But we have our first series of special meetings started, so just a reminder for that. That's all I have.
And if folks don't know the dates of those, please reach out to the clerk.
She gave us a nice one.
Yeah, so just make sure everybody's got them. And so we'll make sure that everybody knows about the specific dates and locations and all that. All right. Anything else, Mr. Warren?
Thank you.
All righty. Earthquake drill update. I believe that was Mr. Benson.
Yes, sir. And we have 2 guests that will come up and help describe this drill. So we've discussed this before. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Boyd Benson, Public Works. There is an all-valley drill scheduled for September 30th. And with us tonight, we have Ray Mahol from the school district and Battalion Chief Greg Bodden and Sean Tozer as well, who does a lot of the communications. So what we want to do tonight is take a few minutes to remind you how important this event is, give you a general outline, and then to answer any questions. So we started planning this, 8 months ago about? And at that point, we had about 37 partners when you added all the different type subgroups. We're down to about 13 right now. We've shed a few partners over the time. But Carnation, Duvall, Snoqualmie were the main leads, along with Fire District 45 and Eastside Fire and Rescue, along with the school district. Duvall Police and King County Sheriff are active. King County Emergency Management are supporting the event as well. And then Seattle Public Utilities, along with some other folks listed up there, including quite a few volunteers. So, real quick, people talk about Cascadia and the Seattle Fault. Those are two great hazards for the Pacific Northwest. The South Whidbey Fault, which runs down through South Whidbey, through Everett, down our valley, is the design event that impacts our area most severely. So the shaking associated with this it's much greater than Cascadia, much greater than Cascadia, and much greater than Seattle. So Town Chief Bodden was just going to go over some of what we might expect during an earthquake. And once again, what we're looking at here is based on information published by the Department of Natural Resource. They actually run these earthquake scenarios through a program called HAZAS, which kicks out impacts to individual buildings, bridges, hospitals, and other facilities.
Thank you. First off, I want to say that representing the fire department, we are thrilled to be working with the school district, the city, and our other partners in emergency preparedness. I've been involved in a number of exercises in our area, and this is one of the greatest things we can do to prepare, is have all these different partners working together to plan and then run the actual exercise. We find the documents we're preparing for the drill are an opportunity to update the documents we've used in planning and in a real disaster. On the screen behind you is an illustration of the level of severity. And I know the key is in the lower right corner. It's a little hard to read, but as maps are typically colored, the bright orange red is bad, and that extends out into the Snoqualmie Valley. So this will be approximately 7.0 earthquake, which I'd like to point out is today's earthquake in Mexico was 7.1, and if you've been looking at the headlines today, you see the level of damage there. So the way this drill will be launched is there's an announcement to all the participants in all the locations that kind of sets the stage. Here's what you've experienced. And then as the drill proceeds, they are given additional information of what they encounter as they travel through the district or they conduct their business. So the initial conditions they'll encounter will be 45 to 60 minutes of seconds, 45 to 60 seconds of shaking, many broken windows, car alarm sounding. You'll have flooding in some buildings as pipes break, fire alarm, sprinkler systems fail. You'll have fallen furniture, many items tossed from shelves. We'll see structural damage, broken chimneys, broken storefronts, especially in older buildings in like our older part of our downtown. You'll smell natural gas as appliances tear away from their connections. The power will be out in probably most of the valley. Landline phones will be up in the air. You may be able to call out of our area. You probably won't be able to call throughout the valley. Cell phones will be intermittent. You'll be overloaded right away. So you may have success every 15, 20 tries. There'll be no cable or internet. That system goes down quite quickly. The emergency radio systems that we rely on will likely be overwhelmed initially as responders or reporting in. So we'll have challenges there. And then as we begin the drill, we'll discover things like the earth leading up to bridges. Bridge approaches will have subsided. So even if the bridge survived, you can't drive onto it. You may see damage to bridges, and it will require assessment from qualified engineers to determine if we can go across it. I know the school district did an inventory of how many bridges and culverts there are on their bus routes. Was it 54 or something? So they have to make a decision on whether they can transport students across all these resources. We'll see damage to water systems, the toll pipeline, water towers. So that's just kind of a touch of what we might see. So as I said, the big part of this is working together, all the different response agencies and our community partners. My organization will have crews driving pre-established routes to assess the area. We'll have an exercise in resource allocation. They'll be reporting more problems than we have people on duty to respond to, so we'll have to triage. We'll be opening an emergency operations center with the city at the fire station, and this is where we will track damage and allocate resources. As I mentioned before, our regional radio systems are likely to be overloaded, so we'll be exercising alternative communication means, ham radio, older style VHF radios. We call it our communications degradation plan as those systems fail. So those are the activities we'll be involved in.
Maria, if we want to talk a bit about school district activities.
Sure. So this particular drill is a culmination of 5 years of work the school district's been putting into updating our plans, training our staff, building emergency response teams in each of our buildings that will assume incident command roles as a disaster rolls out. The types of plans that we look at are earthquakes are one of them, but we also look at plans for active shooter, chemical spills on the highway, fire, which never seems to happen anymore because we're so well versed in that one. This particular drill, we've broken it into 4 phases for the school district because it's so incredibly comprehensive. We have 7 school sites, plus this district office, transportation, and a maintenance facility. So the first phase of this was to train and work with our drivers on how to cross the bridges, right? We have a protocol for how to assess bridges and get students safely across them. This becomes very pertinent when, for our purposes, when there's an earthquake, we auto-evacuate all the valley schools. They do not stay in Carnation. So they head up the hill, siren, no siren, doesn't matter. An earthquake means that dam could have been breached. We're not taking any chances with aftershocks. And it's just, for us to get all the students up onto the high ground and put them into the various schools and then do reunifications is a much more prudent plan for us. And if communication systems are down, how would we be able to get word out? So from our point of view, it's just safer to get on foot. We do this drill every year. We're doing it again on the 27th, and the students and the staff are very well versed in that. They get up there lickety-split. We have an hour and 10 minutes to get off that valley floor, and we do it, I'd say, probably between 20 and 30 minutes. The next phase is actually doing that drill on the 27th. Then the phase that we're going to practice on the 30th will be the ESC staff, which is the district administration staff that are going to assume command. We will have simulations of what's going on in all the schools, a simulation of the auto evacuation, and they're going to be getting radio and different means of communication saying this is happening, and then they're going to have to put a plan together. They've got all of the 3,000 plus students and staff that they're going to have to manage, getting those students in a safe building, sheltered, accounted for, cared for, and reunified with their parents. And we've got big plans in place that we've trained for, and this will be a terrific execution of those.
Great, thank you. And then just a few more minutes, if we may. This is all about relationships. If we're working together, we understand we can respond together no matter what the event is. So we've developed a few new relationships. I've underlined 2. Evergreen is setting up a pilot care clinic. This is something that's supported by the Department of Health. And basically that would be I'm not going to say a clearinghouse, but it's more of a, let's say, a triage center within an event. And if it's shown to be a clinic, it may or may not have more potential to get supplies than the rest of the Department of Health during events. We're very excited about that. So the fire district supporting that, the city of Duvall supporting that, and we're also increasing our communications with King County Sheriff's Office. They have volunteered to bring in a medevac or a helicopter to have a simulated evacuation of someone that can't receive care either from low-level volunteer care or the Evergreen Clinic, or they go into the fire district who has more advanced care if you actually have to helicopter someone out. So we're very, very excited about those relationships. We've shown these plots before. It's just for people to understand, if there's an earthquake here, it's devastating, but it's not what you'll see in Mexico City. Based on the hazardous models, there'll be about 140 homes in Duvall that will be tagged as uninhabitable. They'll have that much damage. So out of 2,000 homes, that's not so bad. There are handfuls of severe injuries, and the rest are more minor injuries. So it kind of makes people understand this will be very devastating. You should be prepared to be on your own for at least 3 days. You should understand that your sewer, your water, and your communications, and your electricity, and your transportation routes are not there anymore until we start recovering. And I think Duvall's a little more resilient than most communities because we're used to flooding and the rest. So this is the general outline of the drill. I was going to ask Sean to really quickly summarize what's happening with the PIO plan. So there is a communication plan between the city, the school district and the fire department. And I don't know if you want to talk about any event information that's going out.
I'll try to be pretty brief, but we drew up kind of a real simplified media plan, somewhat similar to what we do with Bear Creek, where we want to tell people kind of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then at the end what they can do about it. So there's a few things that we're going to do with the lead-up press release and some information about setting up the drill, making sure people understand to expect to see emergency vehicles, people wandering around, and maybe signs that say drill in progress, maybe a helicopter coming in, so there's not any kind of strange reaction day of drill. We'll follow that up with stuff during the drill, kind of let folks know what we're doing, and then again, kind of results oriented. And then following the drill, I think that'll be the most important, is lessons learned, and then again, that educational message about what you can do. And this is pretty pertinent to what's going on right now with the hurricanes and more impending hurricanes and then these earthquakes. So again, it's a good opportunity for us all as agencies and kind of teammates to refine our skills, and then again, let folks know what they can do should that happen here. So, and again, press releases, social media, that's kind of the big thing, and then I guess that's it.
So we put up a timeline here. During an event, there may be spontaneous volunteers, and maybe during a drill we'll see spontaneous volunteers from you folks or from the community or from the audience. And basically it's usually the rally points at the fire district, either Carnation or Duvall. And if you do show up, you'll be shown to a shelter to be registered in this building. You'll be deployed to walk around the city to look for damage. And at the end, we'll have a shelter meal that's being prepared by volunteers at 12:30, or what is it? Yeah, 12, and a debrief of the event. So if you're interested in participating, we really appreciate you showing up. And I think we'll see quite a bit of interaction between volunteers and definitely a lot of interaction between the agencies. Any questions we can answer about this drill?
I just want to say, you guys have come so far in the last 8 years from updating the plan to going forth with more FEMA training, and it's really impressive to see the detail that you guys have gotten into over the last few years and the passion that you guys have clearly developed for the emergency management side. And I think that our community will be well served and excited that you're participating in the drill. So nice work, guys.
Outstanding. And once again, it's an amazing group between fire, police, school district, and the rest. So we're very fortunate to have such good partners.
Councilmember Thomas.
So what would, if an earthquake really did happen, what would our response be with the bridges in that town and around town? So people could circulate to get the kids from school, to get home, things like that.
What a good question. So I'll tell you from a city perspective. As part of this drill, we have, it's not formalized all the way yet, but we have, well, actually the fire district has it formalized, a route map to look at critical infrastructure, facilities, bridges, and the rest. So we're using this as a stepping stone. So we have to understand our egress routes. Can we get to Monroe? Will there be lateral spreading on these roads in the valley? Will there be liquefaction in the valley? So those injects that Township Bottom discussed will be those things. Uh-oh, now you can't get out. What are you going to do? So you're asking about picking up children. That's something the school district do be drilling. How they're getting children off of Evacuation Hill to a reunification location. And so by doing this in a drill, what it does, it really makes you ask the question, how is it going to get done? You draw a drill plan, and pretty soon that's almost your standard operating procedure. And I think that was really true with respect to the school district and the bus egress routes. And you can look at every culvert and bridge.
Every culvert and bridge. So our assessment showed us, 50 some odd bridges, but they're almost invisible. You're driving down the road and you might notice a couple barriers, but not really. And I was driving out near Ames Lake and I drove over one and I thought, gosh, I didn't even realize I went over a bridge. So in working with Sabrina at Transportation, we started mapping all of these bridges within our busing routes and discovered that most of them are over pretty shallow spaces, and that if the bridge hadn't collapsed or the separation from the road and the bridge wasn't too great, that we could actually develop a protocol to get our students across those bridges. It involves evacuating the bus, driving the bus across empty, moving the kids on foot across the bridge. It's tedious. But the drivers all have these maps, they all have the training, and they drive these routes every day, and they're going to know pretty quickly where these are and quickly get those students, if they can, safely across those spans. The big bridges are all off. We don't cross any of those. We won't until engineers have come back and certified those safe. So I can't really speak to how parents are going to get back to the valley. It's a deep concern of ours, and our preparations are to house students for as long as possible in the city of Duvall until those parents can get over to us.
And once again, it's about relationships. So the building department can assess buildings. Engineers can assess bridges. So by working together, if school districts, they may have limited training on how to assess buildings. It's common training. But if they have questions, we can come in. Same with the fire department. And it's all working together to make sure that we understand that the critical facilities can still be maintained. And one big one for us is water. We'll have 2 crew members drive around the city, and they're going to find out that maybe this water main failed. What does that mean for fire service for town chief body? And so those are the type of things we'll be looking at.
Okay, Mr. Benson.
Yes, sir.
Say, for example, some of these council members on Saturday the 30th want to participate in some way. What time do they need to show up and where?
So we put a slide up just for that reason. And normally you would show up at the fire district, not to knock on the door and ask to help, but the volunteers that register, the trained volunteers that register spontaneous and volunteers would be set up there. So the real answer is you show up at the Review ESC, this building, downstairs between 8 and 8:30. Oh, man. And then you sign it, and you're not a city council member. You're a volunteer. You're not an audience member. You're someone who's checked their family. They made sure that their gas is off and everything's okay at their house. And then they've decided they want to come out and assist first responders. So what can they do? Well, they're not going into buildings, but they can set out cones. They can help make sandwiches. They can do all these good things. So you can put to work. And we're very excited for folks like that to show up.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nixon.
You have the quad here. What about landowners? Have you reached out to landowners? Because I can get from Carnation to here without ever going on the road. I can get from here to Kayak Lake without never going on the road.